Hello and welcome everybody to my French Grand Prix race preview over some footage of a very crazy race from France in the F1 2018 game. So we'll start off with a look back at last year's Grand Prix and then make some predictions for the coming Grand Prix. The start was a crazy one last year. The first couple corners in France are always a little nutty. You had the Vettel-Bottas incident. Vettel ended up getting a 5-second penalty for making contact with the rear tire of Bottas going through turn 1, sending Bottas for a spin, giving Bottas a puncture, and with the wing damage, both Vettel and Bottas had to start a little further back. They both did a really good job at making it back through the field. It was right at that point where the Ferrari-Mercedes battle for the championships were really heating up, and you could tell that they both wanted to score valuable points despite the fact that the race had been ruined for the most part off the bat. You also had two of the French drivers taking themselves out in I think it was just after turn 2 going through turn 3. I think you had Gasly and Ocon make contact, and that put both drivers out of the race. So disappointing weekend for two of the three French drivers. And all the French drivers wanted to make a big impact. It was the first French Grand Prix in a number of years, and they really wanted to do something good out there for the country and really give the fans something to cheer about, but unfortunately found themselves out of the running for the most part. So it was a good recovery race for Vettel and Bottas, like we had mentioned. It was also a good race for Red Bull. They finished 2nd and 4th, with Verstappen 2nd and Ricciardo 4th. This was one of those races that really showed what Red Bull could do when their engines weren't failing last year. As you'll remember, it was a massive problem for them. It seemed like every weekend, one of the drivers, more often Ricciardo, was on the sidelines with an engine failure. And it'll be a good race to see if Honda has made any serious improvements to that car. I already think that they have. I think the Honda engine's doing a lot better than the Renault last year. But based on their strong finish last year, yeah, there was an accident at the start, but it'll be a good way to gauge how far that Honda engine's brought them, because though it is a windy circuit, like I said, it's a long straight, there's a lot of opportunity for overtaking, so it's not all downforce related. You need a bit of that engine power to offset the loss of positions to the more powerful cars on the straightaways. And there were 5 DNFs in last year's race, including Alonso, who had the great radio message about having no tires, no brakes, and not really caring about what they were going to do next. That was pretty good. I think he retired lap 50, if I remember correctly, just near the end. It was one of those races where you were starting to get the feeling that Alonso probably wasn't going to be around for next year. He was getting that jaded mentality about him where it was like, I don't really care anymore, sort of just giving up hope for the most part through some of those races, and really sort of an omen for what was to come with his career. There was a safety car. I predict there'll be one again this year. And one thing you can't go without talking about in France is the horrendous pit exit. I haven't seen anything yet that says that they're doing anything to fix that for this year. I don't know if there's much they can do, but you have a pit exit on this track that leads right onto a straightaway on the racing line to get to the apex for the very first corner of the track. And so imagine if you flip the sides on Canada and the cars were being released, instead of going around and releasing on the outside of 2, if they were being released right into the apex of 1. That's basically what the pit exit does here, and it's horrible. I think it's extremely dangerous. They have a special set of lights to tell the drivers when people are coming, but it just creates an undue risk, and we always see something go a little bit awry there, whether it's someone coming down the track who's not expecting a car to come out, or a car coming out that doesn't expect someone to be coming down the track. So you'd be remiss if you didn't mention that insane feature. I think that's almost more bothersome to me than the eye problems that you get from the funky visual distortion field that they have surrounding the circuit. One of the most powerful parts of this circuit is the straightaway, and there was a lot of overtaking on the straights, and I think we'll see a lot more this year with the more powerful DRS. Even though it's not as OP as a lot of people thought it was going to be, the DRS is still a little more powerful, and it is a long straight, and it has a lot of opportunity for overtaking into the chicane that separates the Mistral straight from the slightly shorter straight that comes after it. So for my predictions this year, I'm thinking, unfortunately, the qualifying, I'm thinking it's probably going to be a Mercedes 1-2. This is a track that they were good at last year. There's no reason to think they won't dominate here this year, unfortunately. And I know that it seems dire and it's sort of something I don't want to say, but I do think there'll be another 1-2. And I think we're going to see Verstappen get the third spot. I think that the Ferraris will be close behind, and then I think Gasly, unfortunately, will be in 6th place again. I think the Renaults will probably try to show up strong here, but I just don't know what they're going to be able to do. That car's been so all over the place this year that it's hard to tell. I'm thinking maybe the Renaults probably finish one inside the top 10, maybe a Ricciardo in 8th, but probably Hulkenberg, unfortunately, back in maybe 11th or 12th. I don't see the Racing Point having a very good race here. If you remember both cars, there was Ocon who retired in that first lap incident, and then Perez retired with an engine problem. They don't have as much data about this circuit, especially because, like I said, that was the first time they've run this circuit in a while. So with that lack of telemetry, lack of data from last year, it'll be hard for the teams to set up a car properly for this year. So I see Perez and Stroll probably on the outside looking in for this one. Kimi Räikkönen did well here last year, and I think that there's a good chance that he might qualify inside the top 10. So that's sort of my bold prediction, especially based on where the Saubers have been in the last few races, that Räikkönen can pull out a 7th or something along those lines. But that remains to be seen. I do think that there'll be a safety car. The first corner, first lap, probably, in my estimation. It is a very difficult corner to have 20 cars going through there. So I do think that there's going to be some form of incident there. And your race finish, I think, will finish with Leclerc in 3rd, Verstappen in 2nd, and Hamilton winning the race. I think that Bottas is going to have an engine failure. I think I said that the last race, but I still feel it coming. I feel like the time is nigh for Mercedes to have a little issue, and I would like to say Vettel does really well in this race, but I think he's going to be a little bit too hot. And I think that there's a likelihood that he makes a fairly big mistake, either at the start of the race or somewhere close to it. Vettel's one of those guys, he's extremely passionate, he's very emotional, and he's going to be driving with a chip on his shoulder. And when Sebastian Vettel drives with a chip on his shoulder, you get multi-21. So it's going to be interesting to see how he responds to what happened in the last race. And remember, like I said, he did have that 5-second penalty last year, so it'll be interesting to see what he does here. I think that he'll be probably around the 5th place spot, Gasly in 6th. I'm not giving a glowing endorsement of Gasly, especially considering my last video was mostly a defense of Gasly, but I think that there's still a learning curve there. I don't expect him to be all of a sudden up in the top 3, even though I don't think he's a terrible driver. I also don't think that it's going to just be overnight success for him. I think that there's still steps that need to be taken and improvements that need to be made. I think if you're going to look at an improvement curve for him, somewhere between Britain and Belgium, I see him sort of being there, and if he's not by then, things are looking pretty dire for him. And for retirements, I think we'll have 6 retirements in total, with 3 being mechanical failures and 3 being in an incident of some kind. You have to remember that at this point in the season, we're starting to get to the point where teams are trying to extend the engine life as much as they can, trying to play a strategic game with their engine components so that they're not on the back foot for the rest of the season, taking engine penalties. So you might see some teams trying to push some components from this point on, and you're a lot more likely to get some form of failure from that. So look for at least a couple engine failures, probably 6 retirements in total. I definitely think that at least 2 cars, maybe 3, will be taken out through that first 2 corners, and that will throw up at least the one safety car I think we'll have, not barring others, but my prediction is that there'll just be 1. And my prediction for driver of the day for the race will go to Max Verstappen. Big surprise there, I know. Driver of the day. He wins it every point he can. So not a big stretch there. But for my one to watch, I'm going to go with Denny Kvyat. And I think after some strong showings in the last few races, especially that absolutely incredible overtake on Sainz in Canada, I think he's someone to look out for, and definitely somebody that could make an impact here. He's already on 10 points there for Toro Rosso, so he could be looking to prove himself this weekend in whatever way that he can. So watch for him to have a strong drive. So those are my main predictions for the race. If there's anything that you guys think that you want to see or think that we might see, definitely let me know. It's going to be an exciting race to watch. I do like this circuit. Despite the couple of problems that I have with it, it generally throws up some good racing, and it is a very fun circuit in terms of providing a variety of turns and a variety of different places to overtake throughout the race, whether by DRS or just some fancy braking. There was a great overtake last year by Bottas on Grosjean, and it was just a beautiful braking maneuver through one of the longer corners. And it just proves that having a variety of corners on the circuit, it can really throw up some exciting racing and provide some different drivers, different spots where they're really good and other spots where they're not as good, which means you get some good scraps in there. Ricciardo had a few really nice overtakes here last year as well. With that being said, I hope you guys have a great day, a great race weekend, and I hope you enjoy the Grand Prix. I hope it throws up a little bit more excitement in the season. We've already had our fair share, but you can always ask for more. And if there's anything that you want to see, let me know down in the comments below. Any predictions that you have. I always love to discuss and debate things like that here on this channel. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you all have a great day, and goodbye.
Mate, I have no brakes, no tires. We are out of the points. I mean, we try to do whatever, but I don't care too much about Grosjean.